The IDF has taken control of a key headquarters of the Radwan force in southern Lebanon, which is located in a tunnel about 800 meters long and 10 meters deep beneath the surface. This is just a short distance from the Israeli border. Also, in the last 24 hours, dozens of fierce battles have resulted in the elimination of over 300 Hezbollah terrorists, greatly weakening their fighting strength in southern Lebanon. However, Hezbollah is also increasing the rate of rocket and drone fire into Israeli civilian communities, sending millions of Israelis into bomb shelters overnight. There is also evidence that some of the surviving mid-level Hezbollah operatives are trying to flee Lebanon, while other Lebanese factions are cutting their ties and increasing their criticism of Hezbollah, trying to let the IDF know that they don't deserve to be targeted. Meanwhile, the IDF continues to hit Hezbollah targets in Beirut, disrupting their operations and their plans for this war. In short, Hezbollah is humiliated, and their few remaining friends are both frightened and furious, while their enemies smell blood in the water. Meanwhile, on the southern front, the head of the Hamas Air Force was eliminated amidst increased IDF ground maneuvers in the northern Gaza Strip, and there is documentation of how Hamas terrorists are beating residents who tried to escape from Jabalia. While all of this is going on, the question of an immediate Israeli strike on Iran to retaliate for the ballistic missile attack on October 1st looms at large. The regime in Tehran appears to be having second thoughts about what they did 2 weeks ago, and they are now sending a distress signal to the United States, begging them to put pressure on Israel not to hit them too hard. Let's dive into the details. I'm Yair Pinto, and this is your Boots on the Ground report about what is happening in Israel on the 375th day of the war against Hamas, Hezbollah, the Houthis in Yemen, and all the Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, all of which are taking their orders from the head of the snake, Iran. Before we start today's report, I want to ask you to click on the subscribe button so that you will never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. Subscribe to this channel to help us share the truth. I want to mention today's sponsor of the video, 8 Days of Hope. They are a new sponsor, and we're very proud to partner with them. We'll talk about their blessed work later on in the clip. First, the IDF briefings over the last 24 hours gave details about over 230 Hezbollah positions which were hit and destroyed. This led to the elimination of dozens of terrorists in southern Lebanon in face-to-face encounters and directed Air Force strikes, destroying Hezbollah terrorist infrastructure and locating many weapons. The Air Force has attacked about 200 terror targets in the past day in deep southern Lebanon, with terrorist squads, anti-tank positions, and surface-to-surface missiles and launchers amongst the targets that were attacked. The fighters of Hazaken 8th Brigade Combat Team, under the command of the 91st Division, continued the ground operation focused on southern Lebanon. The forces of the brigade continue to eliminate many terrorists in face-to-face battles, locate weapons, and destroy terrorist infrastructure, including tunnels and bunkers. Speaking of bunkers, in recent days, IDF forces located a Hezbollah command compound, unusual in size, in the village of Muhabib, about 3 kilometers north of the border with Israel. At the entrance to the compound, Hezbollah guards were eliminated in fierce battles before the IDF could secure access to the site. The IDF troops who entered this compound had previously received intelligent information about it, but they were still surprised to see the size and complexity firsthand. The tunnels and bunkers in this complex were dug 10 meters below the surface and at a total length of 800 meters. This was all excavated from solid rock underneath a mountain. There were also 8 separate shaft openings which could be used to enter or exit this tunnel complex, and this is including the main entrance, which was under the garage of an ordinary civilian home. The complex included accommodations for allowing several hundred terrorists to stay there comfortably for a long period of time. There was furniture, food, water, refrigerators, cooking facilities, showers, and toilets, and much more. There was also electricity supplies, internet connection, televisions, computers, and several portraits of the late Hezbollah leader Hassan Nasrallah to decorate the walls. Large quantities of canned food and medical equipment was also found in the complex, as well as what appears to be the personal possessions of Hezbollah terrorists. The complex was also packed filled with weapons and ammunition, as well as motorcycles and other equipment to be used in the war against Israel. This is actually the purpose of that complex, which Israeli intelligence believe has been excavated since 2010 in preparations for the invasion of Israel. The organization hoped that its relative distance from the border would hide its activities from the eyes of the IDF, and the Radwan force fighters housed there were supposed to travel the distance to the border in a few minutes using their motorcycles and modern Range Rover vehicles, as well as vans mounted with machine guns. These vehicles were found nearby, fueled up and ready to go. It's good to know that this complex, the enormous stocks of weapons it contained, and the vehicles meant to transport them into the nearby Israeli border are no longer available for Hezbollah to use in their war against Israel. But we all know that this was just one of many such facilities that Hezbollah built under and around civilian villages all around southern Lebanon. The IDF has found several more of these complexes, and there is always a sense of surprise at the size and complexity of these locations. I would add a personal note of great sadness. It's just terrible to think about how much money and efforts was invested in this project of making a war with Lebanon and Israel instead of going directly to serve the people of Lebanon in their economic crisis. Those who say Hezbollah is caring for the Shia community in Lebanon, providing social services and charity, should think twice after looking at these bunkers. That's where most of the money that Hezbollah spent over the last decades went, and there's no hiding it anymore. The main challenge now is the demolition of all these underground tunnels and bunkers to prevent Hezbollah from using them again in the future. Similar to what happened in Gaza, this is carried out by various methods, from exploding to sealing. More extensive treatment is given to areas adjacent to the border fence, with the understanding that their destruction is essential to restoring the trust of the residents of Israel back to their homes in the north. The senior official said that these are significant steps towards creating the conditions that will allow the residents to return to their homes. With all that having been said, it's important to point out that Hezbollah is humiliated but not defeated. The campaign in southern Lebanon is going well, but it is much more difficult than what is being presented to the Israeli public. In other words, this isn't as easy as the IDF is making it look, and we ask you to continue praying for these soldiers as they do this very difficult and dangerous work. On that note, it is evident that after the initial chaos into which Hezbollah fell as a result of losing most of their senior leadership to Israeli strikes over the past few weeks, the surviving field commanders are seeking to regroup and reorganize. They are also seeking to preserve their strength and ammunition in favor of a long war of attrition. Therefore, it is focusing its efforts on pinpoint attacks on the forces operating in the field, and each such battle receives an envelope of fire support, mainly missiles and mortars, from rear forces. Before we dive into the formation of the IDF and the ground maneuver in southern Lebanon, and explain in a simple way where the IDF operates, I would like to ask you to stay tuned to the truth in real time through our news website at tbnisrael.com/news. Share this website with everyone who wants to know what truly is happening in this region, in this war that Israel is fighting. And please subscribe to this YouTube channel so that you will never miss another episode of Boots on the Ground. The IDF began ground maneuvers in Lebanon about 2 weeks ago, and every day since then has seen intense activity against Hezbollah terrorists in the south of the country. The ground operation is led by 4 IDF divisions, which operate alternately throughout southern Lebanon through brigade combat teams of regular and reserve forces. Along with the Air Force's attacks in depth, it targets 3 centers of gravity of Hezbollah: the political, civilian, and military command and control system of the organization, its fire system, and the offensive capability that Hezbollah has established in the villages and open areas adjacent to the border with Israel. Sources in Lebanon told us that Hezbollah's conduct in the field is chaotic and somewhat reminiscent of Hamas's conduct in Gaza. According to the general map, it can be estimated that the next target of the IDF will be an advance towards the Quneitra area in Syria, sometimes called the soft underbelly of Syria. But even before this maneuver begins, the IDF is working to cut off the Qusayr-Homs axis, which is the link between Lebanon and Syria, with the aim of disrupting the supply routes of weapons to Hezbollah. Israel will gain full control over the Syrian Quneitra region, thus positioning itself as the strategic guardian of the region. This move is intended to prevent Hezbollah and other Iranian-backed forces from operating in the region. Of course, all of these military victories come at a cost. We must not forget the drone strike on Sunday evening that claimed the lives of 4 Golani Brigade IDF recruits, as well as yesterday launches into Gush Dan and the Haifa Bay in Israel. These attacks are a reminder that this is a war that is getting worse, and so it must be brought to a conclusion as soon as possible. But of course, as the old saying goes, the enemy gets a vote. And because this is a war involving Israel, a lot of other people who would say that they're our friends also get a vote. And this includes the United Nations, which has a force of so-called peacekeepers in southern Lebanon called the United Nations Interim Force in Lebanon, or UNIFIL. This force utterly failed to carry out its mission of preventing Hezbollah from deploying south of the Litani River as specified in United Nations Security Council Resolution 1701, which ended the Second Lebanon War in 2006. Then, they utterly failed to stop Hezbollah from firing over 9,000 rockets into Israel over the past year. Despite this, and despite the fact that the war between Israel and Hezbollah, that this force was partially meant to prevent, is well underway, the United Nations is refusing to withdraw these peacekeepers, insisting that they be kept in place to keep the United Nations flag flying on the Lebanese border. And this is according to Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres. Attempting to make the point that the United Nations is still relevant seems to me like a really poor reason to expose these troops to danger from Hezbollah terrorists and just from fire by this ongoing war between the IDF and Hezbollah elements. But the United Nations and the governments that contribute troops to UNIFIL are refusing to do the obvious thing and withdraw them. They are instead using these poor people as yet another lever against Israel and giving Hezbollah the ability to use them as human shields to protect their own fighters and secure propaganda points against Israel. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on this issue going forward. You can help us by sharing this video on YouTube, subscribing to this YouTube channel, and following us on social media. Now, before we continue with the news, I want to tell you about our sponsor for today's video. We're going through a rough time here in Israel, but we know that other places are also having a rough time. This includes our friends in the United States, who have been hit by many natural disasters this year, including the recent back-to-back hurricanes Helena and Milton. Just like here in Israel, when there are people in need, God sends help. 8 Days of Hope is a Christian non-profit organization that is doing exactly that. In only a couple of days, they had hundreds of volunteers feeding communities, rebuilding houses, and finding shelters for anyone affected by these storms. It's always amazing to see people coming together, serving with love, helping those that face these tragedies. 8 Days of Hope, or EDOH in short, really needs your help so they can keep doing their work. You can see the address now on the screen, and you can also find it in the description of this video. So guys, please make a donation, and you can even become a volunteer yourself. And now, back to the news from Israel. Switching our focus to events in the Gaza Strip, the forces of Division 162 continues to operate in the Jabalia area, while the Gaza Division and the 252nd Division continue to operate in the center and south of the Gaza Strip, eliminating dozens of terrorists in the last 24 hours. The IDF and the Shin Bet announced on Monday evening that they had eliminated the head of the Hamas Air Force, Samer Abu Daka, in an attack that took place in September. Abu Daka was among those responsible for planning the infiltration of paragliders and UAVs on October 7 into the Israeli territory, as well as launching drones and UAVs into Israel and setting up more sophisticated capabilities for Hamas to use. In related news, the IDF Unit 504, which is in charge of human intelligence, released a recording on Monday in which an IDF officer can be heard speaking with a resident of Jabalia who is trying to follow instructions to evacuate the city. The residents can be heard saying that whenever they try to leave, masked Hamas thugs beat them with sticks, demanding that they stay in the city so Hamas can continue to use them as human shields. When the representative from the IDF asks to verify that it is indeed Hamas that prevents them from evacuating, the Gazan residents confirmed this and asked when he is in distress what to do. As mentioned, with the beginning of Division 162 activity in Jabalia last week, the IDF called on the residents of Jabalia to evacuate their homes for their own safety. The terrorist organization Hamas uses the Gazan citizens as human shields and prevents them from responding to the IDF's calls to evacuate to safe zones. Here at TBN Israel, we will continue to report on what is happening in the Gaza Strip. Please continue to help us by sharing these videos on YouTube and following us on social media. It's really important that the truth be heard. To conclude, there is some news to report about events in Iran, which is the source of all the money, weapons, training, and ideology that is fueling this war against Israel. A report this week in the Kan News portal here in Israel quoted a source familiar with the recent conversation between senior Iranian regime officials and their US counterparts. The source said that in the course of this conversation, the Iranian officials begged America to put pressure on Israel not to hit certain targets like the nuclear program or all infrastructure. They also said that there are certain other targets that Israel can hit as long as we don't hit them too hard, and Iran will consider the matter closed and this round over. This is in contrast to public statements by Iranian officials that if Israel drops even a single bomb in Iran, even if it doesn't hit anything, Iran will unleash the full power of its military might to utterly destroy the Jewish state. Elsewhere, the Washington Post newspaper reported on Monday that Israel has agreed to a Biden administration request not to attack Iran's nuclear sites or oil infrastructure. According to the report, Israel has also agreed to stop striking Hezbollah targets in the city of Beirut, which is Lebanon's capital. The report said that Israel would limit its strikes to Iranian military and IRGC installations, the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's office issued a statement in response to those reports early Tuesday morning, saying, "We're listening to the views of the American administration, but we will make our own final decisions based on Israel's national interests." Elsewhere, another senior Israeli official told the media that Israel attacks everywhere in Lebanon, including Beirut. In a related story, more than 2 weeks after we last saw him, Quds Force Commander Ismail Qani appeared on Iranian television late Monday evening. In the report, Qani can be seen weeping over the body of a senior Revolutionary Guards officer, Abbas Nirpushan, as it was uploaded from a transport aircraft at the Merhabab airport in Iran. As you may recall, there have been conflicting reports in recent days regarding the fate of Qani. It is claimed in various Arab media outlets that he was killed in an Israeli airstrike in Beirut. Other reports said that he died of a heart attack, while still others say that he's been questioned by the Iranian secret police on suspicion that he was being passing classified information to the Israelis and to the Americans. Sometimes the reports overleap, saying that he suffered a heart attack while being interrogated, or maybe he took poison to avoid being tortured, or maybe he just collapsed from all the stress. In any case, I want to take this opportunity to personally address the people of Iran and send them hopes for peace, relief from your many problems. I also want to remind you that Israel has never done anything to hurt the people of Iran. In fact, before the Ayatollah regime violently took control of your country in 1979, Israel was a great friend of Iran and helped you with agricultural advice, medical training, and much more. This evil regime is obsessed with destroying Israel and is ignoring the deteriorating quality of life that Iranians are suffering from, spending money on weapons and tunnels for Hezbollah and anti-ship missiles for the Houthis in Yemen instead of schools, hospitals, and housings for ordinary Iranians. Like all Israelis, I am very sorry about this, and I hope it changes very soon. I send a prayer for peace from our viewers and to you, the people of Iran. And I call on all of us that care about the truth, to share, follow, and subscribe to this YouTube channel. Help us spread the truth. And most importantly, pray. Pray for the people of Israel. Pray for the people of Iran. Pray for the peace and the safety of the IDF soldiers who fight for us against Hezbollah, against Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Pray for the hostages that are kept by Hamas in Gaza to be returned to their home, to their loved ones. Pray for the residents of the northern border communities, the Israeli residents, to return to their houses when it's safe. And pray for the peace of Jerusalem.
Hello, this is Mati here in Jerusalem with TBN Israel.
This is Yair Pinto from TBN Israel here in Jerusalem. TBN Israel is keeping viewers informed with Israel-focused news, culture, and what God is doing in this land.
Support TBN Israel today online at tbn.org/Israel. Thank you.